For the 10th anniversary, everybody got to pick a Nat 5 of their choice from among water, fire, and wind element monsters. And now that the event is coming to a conclusion, we now have the definitive list of the top 10 monsters chosen by everybody. So welcome to how to ruin the top 10 monsters selected by new players. Number 10, it's Wusa, the Water Pioneer. Wusa can be used to cheese a lot of content because he provides a 3-turn shield and 3 turns of immunity. Pair that with true damage on skill 2 and a 2-turn sleep that just happens to feel like it's... You got yourself a great monster. He also has a super stellar base speed. If you're planning to bring this bad boy into RTA, you can rune him up on Violent, Speed, HP, and just have yourself a grand old time. I'd like to emphasize for all these monsters, when you're talking about PvE content, it's kind of rare that an offset, meaning a 2 set, really matters. In PvP environments though, it definitely does matter. So if we're bringing Wusa into RTA, you'll want to rune him on Violent and a set of Will. For Wusa's artifacts, look for HP as your main stat. Otherwise, try to reduce the amount of damage he takes from certain elements wherever you can find it. Next, we've got Tiana, the Wind Polar Queen. Tiana ignores an entire game mechanic of Summoner's War on her 3rd skill. She removes all buffs and debuffs in play, and she just gets to decide that that happens. Now, the balancing act here is that she has a very low base speed, but she still wants to go first. To try to compensate for that, we're gonna rune her on Swift. And it's probably gotta be your best Swift set too. Whatever gets you the most speed with her is how you'll want to rune her. If you're bringing her in an arena offense, maybe part of the cocky cleave, then you may want her to do some damage too. You can rune her on speed slot 2 and crit damage slot 4. But ultimately, whatever gets her to be the fastest is the way you're going to want to rune her. Just keep in mind that her skill 2 auto crits as long as there's no buffs on the enemy. And auto crit gets around a lot of passives that would restrict you from doing that. So that means that Tiana can crit Kinky. She can also crit Douglas. Tiana loves more crit damage on skill 2 wherever you can find it. Leica is next. If you're looking to bring your Leica into RTA, Violent works great on him, and so does Vampire. Now, bear in mind, he already counterattacks via his passive, and he's got a little bit of healing on skill 1. So Vampire might be a little bit overblown. I personally prefer Violent on him. For an offset, going for Will is usually a good option, or you can opt for something like Nemesis. Now, if you want to be really crazy, you could rune him on Despair. And then he's kind of like Leica from 2017. Because, just in case you didn't know, Leica used to be way crazier. He used to stun. I think we're kind of in an age where we could bring that back. I think we should bring Leica to the point that he was. I think he could exist. I'm rambling. Cut all this. Notably, Leica can also be used in Giants. It's a little harder to make it work the same way it did back in GB10, but the boss still has a hard time killing him because it takes 5 hits to kill him, and he heals on skill 1 and can't glance. So it's very rare that the boss can actually make it through all those chunks of HP. For runing Leica, you'll want to put him on either speed crit damage attack, speed crit damage HP, or maybe attack crit damage HP and look for speed in the subs. Bear in mind, because Leica can attack back, he doesn't need to be as fast as everybody else. However, you don't necessarily want him to just sit there, because especially if he gets stunned, you're going to need him to eventually cycle out of that. Leica's main property can either be attack or a little bit more HP or defense if he needs it. Then look for more healing from skill 1 or additional crit damage from skill 2. Next is Chung Peng, the Wind Art Master. Chung Peng has 3 popular ways to build him as far as main sets are concerned. Violent, so you can get his patented 2-piece combo. Skill 2 into skill 3. That's the point where Chung Peng becomes Strip and follow-up. He sets himself up and then knocks him down. You can also rune him on Swift so he can act as the primary stripper for your team. Just bear in mind his activation rate on skill 2 is a little lower than you might expect for an AoE stripper. Now, alternatively, you could get a little toxic and put him on Despair. It's just the icing on the cake. Like, there's just a little bit of psychological damage dealt to somebody if you rune him on Despair, because you get your cooldown times increased by 1 turn, and then you also skip your next turn. It's not going to happen all the time, but it's toxic enough that I'd recommend trying it out. For realsies though, my favorite way to build him is Violent Will. Speed, HP, accuracy if you can't get enough accuracy in the substats, otherwise you can just go for speed, HP. Bear in mind too, for new players, Chung Peng actually has a lot of usability in Trial of Ascension. In fact, he's appeared on a couple videos for exactly that reason already. If you're bringing him for that kind of PvE content, you can rune him on either Violent or Despair. More HP on Chung Peng goes a long way, and in the substats of your artifacts, look for more accuracy on skill 2 and skill 3. Next is Liam, the Water Weapon weapon master, the holder of one of the most normal names in all of Summoner's War. He's up there with Kyle, Craig, Carlos, and Evan. For Liam, you want as much crit damage as humanly possible, but it's a little bit more complicated than that if you're looking to include Liam on some of the popular speed teams that have come about for dragons. Rage is usually the place to go, however, Liam really wants a lot of crit damage. So if you need to go full broken on this guy and able to get high crit rate and high crit damage, just go for that. Remember, stats over sets. I feel like this is the perfect monster to kind of remind people of that sentiment. Attack, crit damage attack. We're trying to kill people, but you do want to look for a little bit of speed in the subs. Speed tuning really matters on that team. I'm not going to go through how to rune that entire team here. We don't have time for that, but there are a lot of videos on YouTube for how to rune that team if you're interested. Liam wants attack in his artifacts, so that's exactly what we're going to give him. Getting additional damage or more crit damage is also super helpful. Next, Varad the Water Dragon. Usually when you see monsters with a lot of AoE attacks, your first instinct is to put him on Despair. Varad shouldn't necessarily be one of those monsters because he has freeze on skill 2 and skill 3. Plus he's got attack bar reduction. So the dude's got enough crowd control as it is. So I'd prefer you put him on Violent so that way he has a chance to proc and reduce his skill cooldown times instead. For Varad, you'll want to rune him on Speed, HP Accuracy, or Speed, HP Defense, if you can get enough accuracy in the subs. Your main concern should be landing the freezes and all the effects that he's got on his skill 2 and 3, but his damage does scale with defense. This is especially true if you're bringing him for Trial of Ascension. If you're trying to bring him into RTA and you need him to do some damage, you could potentially look into using a crit damage slot 4, but that's up to you. Varad really wants to prioritize defense on his artifacts and then more accuracy on skill 2 or skill 3. Number 4, Nora the Fire Totemist. Nora offers a lot of control and a lot of dots and provoke. To get the most out of her kit, you may want to rune her on Violent so you have a chance to proc into those big skills. Alternatively, you can put her on Despair so that they have a chance to stun in addition to applying dots and provokes. A fun option for an offset for her though is Revenge. She heals on skill 1. So if you happen to have her runed on Despair and Revenge and you provoke the enemy team for them to attack you, when they attack into you, they'll get a dot applied to them. Then you have a chance to counterattack to apply another dot. And if you're runed on Despair, you might just stun them. That's a sick and twisted loop of provoking, stunning, and applying dots. For Nora, you can rune her on Speed HP or Speed HP Accuracy, but again, you just want to really make sure that these monsters have enough accuracy to land their effects. For Nora, check out more accuracy on skill 2 and also more healing on skill 1. Number 3 is Rika the Fire Occult Girl. I'm so glad that she made it this deep into the list because Rika is just straight up one of the best monsters for new players. She has tons of dots on skill 3, plus she's got stun and slow, and she has the chance to cycle herself on skill 1. You can rune Rika similarly to Nora, but I don't necessarily prioritize Revenge with her. You could do either Despair or Violent, but I would also try to put her on Will if possible. Rika loves being on 100% resistance if you bring her into RTA too. For the purposes of what we're doing here, I'd recommend putting her on Speed, HP Accuracy, and a set of Despair and Will. And again, as close to 100% accuracy and 100% resistance as you can get. If something's got to give, I get it, but she really likes it. But this list is also focused on new players, so do what you can. For Rika's artifacts, give her more HP as the main stat, and then look for accuracy on skill 3, skill 2, skill 1. Honestly, whatever accuracy you can get, you're gonna need it. Number 2, Leo the Wind Dragon Knight. We actually just put out a how to rune that featured Leo, so I'm not gonna go super deep here. If you wanna know more about him, you can check out the how to rune 3 popular counterpicks video, but let's just cover him a little bit real quick. Leo's main priority, thanks to his passive, is being at 0 speed, or as close to a 0 additional speed as possible. A couple popular ways to rune him are either Violent or Vampire. Leo guaranteed gets turn 1, so getting a little extra damage with Violent is super helpful, but at the same time, you could have a chance to solo the enemy team with a set of Vampire so that he's gaining life back. That Vampire set really shines when you hit an Ignore Defense Torrent and heal all the way back up to full 2. One thing that I talked about in that video that is worth repeating here is that a single set of Will doesn't do anything with Leo because he's guaranteed to take turn 1. So if you want him to have any immunity going into RTA, he needs to be on at least 2 sets of Will. Now, I'm not saying to do that. You're free to judge whether or not that's right for you. Some people don't expect it but you know, I'm just saying you need more than 1 set of Will if you need Will on Leo. Leo loves to be on an offset of either Nemesis or Revenge even. Or if you're feeling a little crazy, you could put him on Fight. When you go to Rune your Leo, you can go for Attack, Crit Damage, HP, so you have a nice Bruiser Leo. Then focus on finding crit rate and crit damage as well. Leo is looking for a lot of stats. He wants HP, he wants crit rate and crit damage, he wants defense, but all of this is made a little easier because you don't have to worry about speed. So as long as while you're farming, you keep that in mind that you want to keep some runes that have no speed, you should be okay. The artifacts are a great opportunity to give Leo a little bit of extra tankiness in the main stat. Then in your substats, you can look for more crit damage, less damage taken from people, or even a little accuracy on skill 3. Because we don't have a lot of room to rune him on accuracy, so getting a little here might be beneficial so you can land the attack bar reduction. Lastly, number 1, Teshar the Wind Phoenix. Teshar has risen up in popularity recently because he's a part of a very popular Giants Abyss speed team that features him, Prylia, Konamiya, and a couple max HP damage scaling units. For Teshar, if you're using him for that purpose, you'll want to rune him on Rage or whatever gets you the most crit damage. But again, the most important part of this is that your speed tuning is right. For the purpose of the Giants Abyss hard team, you'll want him to move right after Prylia so that way he can capitalize on the defense break that she puts out. For his runes, you'll want to do Attack, Crit Damage, Attack. Damage is the name of the game, so we need him to do it. You can put him on Rage Blade so that way you get enough crit rate while also capitalizing on all that crit damage, but it should be noted if you're using his leader skill, which most people are, you don't need him to be at 100% crit rate. In fact, the crit rate requirement is a lot more lax than normal. In the artifacts for Teshar, you'll want to find Attack as your main property, and then look for additional crit damage wherever you can get it, or more attack up, so that way he benefits more from attack buff. He's a good bird. I'm glad to see him at number 1. He deserves it. There you go, that's the list of how to rune the top 10 monsters that are being chosen in the selective summons by new players. Let me know if you have any builds that you hold near and dear to your heart in a comment down below. Thanks everybody, see you next time, bye bye.